The hospital intercom crackled to life just as Marcus Webb lifted his daughter from the waiting room chair. Her routine checkup was done, her small hand already reaching for his collar, when the words stopped him cold. Code red. O-negative blood needed immediately. Pediatric emergency. All compatible staff report to donation center. Marcus stood frozen in the corridor, his 6-year-old daughter Lily pressed against his chest. O-negative. The rarest blood type. His blood type. Lily tugged at his sleeve, her eyes wide with innocent concern. "Daddy, can we help?" Before he could answer, the donation center doors burst open, and there she stood, Victoria Ashford, CEO of Ashford Industries, the woman who had shattered his dignity just hours ago. Her face was pale with terror, her designer heels clicking frantically on the linoleum. Then she saw him. The janitor, the man she had humiliated in front of dozens of employees, the man who now held her daughter's life in his veins. 6 hours earlier, the morning had begun like any other for Marcus Webb. His alarm rang at 4:30, the same time it had rung for the past 3 years. He moved quietly through the small apartment, careful not to wake Lily, who slept curled around her stuffed elephant in the bedroom they shared. The coffee maker gurgled its familiar song as he pulled on his work uniform, navy blue pants, a matching shirt with his name stitched above the pocket. At 34, Marcus had learned that pride was a luxury he could not always afford. He had a degree in mechanical engineering from Ohio State, had once designed components for aerospace systems, had once worn suits and attended meetings where people called him Sir. That life ended 3 years ago, along with everything else he had built. His wife, Sarah's medical bills had consumed their savings first, then their house, then their future. When she finally lost her battle with cancer, Marcus was left with a mountain of debt and a 3-year-old daughter who still asked when Mommy was coming home. He took the first job he could find. Ashford Industries needed janitors for their corporate headquarters in Columbus. The pay was modest but steady, the hours early enough that he could pick Lily up from the subsidized daycare by 3 o'clock. He mopped floors and emptied trash cans in the same building where engineers discussed designs he could have improved in his sleep. He never complained. He never mentioned his past. He simply worked. Because Lily needed him to work. And that was enough. The main lobby of Ashford Industries gleamed with marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows that caught the morning sun. Marcus arrived at 5:30 to begin his shift, his cleaning cart loaded with supplies. The lobby required special attention on Thursdays, the executive team held their weekly meetings, and Victoria Ashford demanded perfection in every visible space. Marcus worked methodically, starting with the windows and moving to the floors. By 7:15, he was nearly finished. His cart positioned near the elevator bank while he buffed the last section of marble. He did not see Victoria Ashford approaching. He did not hear her heels on the floor he had just polished. He only heard her voice, sharp and cold as January ice. "What is this?" Marcus looked up to find the CEO standing 3 feet away, her designer suit immaculate. Her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun. She was gesturing at his cleaning cart, which partially blocked the path to the executive elevator. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll move it right away." He reached for the cart, but Victoria was already speaking again, her voice carrying across the lobby where a dozen early arrivals had stopped to watch. "If this is the standard we hire now, maybe that's why everything keeps falling apart. Look at this equipment scattered everywhere, blocking executive access, creating hazards." She turned to the security guard at the front desk. "Who supervises the cleaning staff?" "I want a report on my desk by noon." Marcus pulled his cart aside, his movements careful and controlled. He had learned long ago that reacting to humiliation only made it worse. "I apologize for the inconvenience," he said quietly. "It won't happen again." Victoria looked at him then, really looked at him for the first time. Her gaze swept over his uniform, his calloused hands, the gray threading through his dark hair. Whatever she saw confirmed something in her mind, something that made her lip curl slightly. See that it doesn't. She walked past him without another word, her heels clicking a rhythm of dismissal on the marble he had spent an hour perfecting. The lobby remained silent. Marcus felt the weight of every stare, the pity and discomfort of people who were grateful they were not him. He finished his work with steady hands, loaded his cart, and pushed it toward the service corridor. Behind him, he heard someone whisper, "Poor guy." She didn't have to do that. He kept walking. In 3 hours, he would clock out and pick up Lily. He would take her to her doctor's appointment. He would make her laugh on the bus ride home. Victoria Ashford's words would fade like all the other wounds he carried. He had survived worse. He would survive this too. The pediatric clinic at St. Vincent's Hospital was always busy on Thursday afternoons, but Marcus had learned to navigate the chaos. He signed Lily in at 2:45, found seats in the crowded waiting room, and pulled out the picture book he had brought to pass the time. Lily was 6 now, small for her age but fierce in spirit. She had her mother's brown eyes and her father's stubborn chin, and she faced her monthly checkups with the same quiet courage Sarah had shown during her illness. The appointments were routine, monitoring the mild heart murmur the doctors had detected at birth, ensuring it had not worsened. So far, Lily had been lucky. The murmur remained stable, requiring only observation. "Mr. Webb?" The nurse called them back at 3:15. Marcus lifted Lily onto his hip and followed her down the corridor, past examination rooms and supply closets, toward the pediatric wing. They were passing the emergency entrance when the commotion began. A gurney burst through the double doors, surrounded by paramedics shouting instructions. Marcus pressed Lily against the wall to let them pass, catching only glimpses of the scene: a small form on the stretcher, oxygen mask over a pale face, monitors beeping warnings. "Female, age 7. One paramedic called out, "Acute abdominal hemorrhage, vitals dropping. Mother en route." The gurney disappeared around the corner, but Marcus remained still, his heart pounding with a father's instinctive fear. The child on that stretcher was someone's daughter, someone's whole world. "Daddy?" Lily's voice was small. "Is that little girl okay?" "The doctors are helping her, sweetheart. That's what doctors do." He carried her toward their examination room, trying to shake the image of that small, still form. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. 20 minutes later, Marcus was carrying Lily back through the hospital corridors when he heard the scream. It came from ahead of them, near the intersection of hallways, followed by the crash of medical equipment. He rounded the corner to find chaos. A wheelchair lay overturned in the middle of the hall. A nurse was on her knees, shouting for help. And on the floor, inches from Marcus's feet, lay the same little girl from the gurney, her hospital gown twisted, her face gray, her small body convulsing. She pulled out her IV and tried to run. The nurse gasped, "I couldn't catch her. Her mother still isn't here. I need help." Marcus set Lily down gently against the wall. "Stay right here, baby. Don't move." Then he dropped to his knees beside the seizing child. His first aid training from his engineering days surfaced like muscle memory. He turned the girl onto her side to protect her airway, cushioned her head with his jacket, and held her steady as the convulsions racked her small frame. "Get a doctor," he told the nurse. "Now." The seizure lasted 43 seconds. Marcus counted each one, his hands steady on the child's shoulders, his voice low and calm. "You're okay. You're safe. I've got you." When the convulsions finally stopped, the girl's eyes fluttered open. They were blue, wide with terror, and filled with tears. Her small hand found his wrist and gripped it with surprising strength. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Don't let me die. My mommy isn't here. Please don't let me die." Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. He thought of Lily, watching from against the wall. He thought of Sarah, dying in a hospital bed while he held her hand and made promises he could not keep. "You're not going to die," he said firmly. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." The medical team arrived seconds later, lifting the girl onto a fresh gurney, attaching monitors, calling out readings. Marcus stepped back, his jacket still wadded on the floor, his hands trembling now that the crisis had passed. Lily ran to him and wrapped her arms around his legs. "You helped her, Daddy. You saved her." Marcus picked up his daughter and held her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. Somewhere in the distance, he heard a woman's voice, high and frantic. demanding to know where her daughter was. He did not see Victoria Ashford run past. He did not see her face crumple when she reached the trauma room. He only knew that somewhere in this hospital, a mother was terrified, and a little girl was fighting for her life. The blood bank at St. Vincent's Hospital operated on the ground floor, tucked between the cafeteria and the administrative offices. Most days, it served a steady stream of scheduled donors and walk-ins, processing pints of blood that would save lives across the city. Today, it was the center of a crisis. "We're completely out of O negative," the blood bank coordinator said, her voice tight with controlled panic. She was speaking to Dr. Chen, the pediatric surgeon who had been working on the Ashford girl for the past hour. "I've called 3 other hospitals. Everyone's running low. The regional blood center can get us 2 units, but they won't arrive for at least 4 hours. Dr. Chen's face was grim. She doesn't have 4 hours. The internal bleeding is controlled for now, but she's lost too much blood. Her body is shutting down. We need a transfusion within the hour, or we're going to lose her." Marcus was still in the hospital. Lily's checkup had been completed, her heart murmur unchanged. Her health excellent, but they had been delayed by the chaos in the corridors. Now they sat in the main lobby, waiting for the crowd at the exit to thin, when the intercom crackled to life. Code red. O negative blood needed immediately. Pediatric emergency. All compatible staff report to donation center. Marcus looked at his daughter. Lily looked back at him with Sarah's eyes, full of trust and quiet wisdom. "That's your blood, isn't it, Daddy? The special kind?" "Yes, sweetheart. It is." He thought of the little girl who had gripped his wrist and begged him not to let her die. He thought of her mother, somewhere in this hospital, facing the same nightmare he had faced 3 years ago. He stood up and took Lily's hand. "We need to go help someone." The donation center was crowded with hospital staff when Marcus arrived, all of them being tested, most of them being turned away. O-negative blood was rare, found in only 7% of the population. Finding a compatible donor in time was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Marcus approached the intake desk, Lily's hand still in his. "I'm O-negative," he said. "I'd like to donate." The coordinator looked up, her eyes scanning his face with desperate hope. "Are you sure? We need a significant amount. It would require an extended donation." "I understand." She handed him forms to fill out, then led him to a testing station. The screening took 15 minutes. Blood pressure, iron levels, medical history. Marcus answered every question honestly, watched the coordinator's expression shift from hope to disbelief. "Your blood is a perfect match," she said slowly. "Better than perfect, actually. You have a rare antigen combination that makes your blood exceptionally compatible. It's found in maybe 1 in 10,000 people." She paused, seeming to weigh her next words carefully. "Mr. Webb, the amount of blood this child needs, it's significant. You would be saving her life. But there are risks. Dizziness, fatigue, possibly fainting. Are you absolutely certain?" Marcus thought of the little girl's blue eyes, so like Lily's in their terror. "I'm certain." It was then that the doors burst open, and Victoria Ashford stumbled into the room. Her face was streaked with tears, her perfect hair disheveled, her designer suit wrinkled from hours of pacing. She looked like a woman who had been dismantled, piece by fear. "Please," she gasped at the coordinator. "My daughter," they said. "Someone might be able to help, please." And then she saw him. Marcus watched the recognition dawn in her eyes. The janitor from the lobby. The man whose equipment had blocked her path. The man she had humiliated in front of her employees, whose dignity she had crushed beneath her designer heels. He saw her face cycle through shock, confusion, and something that might have been shame. He saw her mouth open, searching for words that would not come. "Mr. Webb is a perfect match," the coordinator said, oblivious to the tension. "He's agreed to donate. Your daughter is going to be okay, Mrs. Ashford." Victoria Ashford stared at Marcus Webb, and for the first time in her life, she had absolutely nothing to say. The donation room was small and clinical, filled with the hum of equipment and the soft beeping of monitors. Marcus lay on the narrow bed, his sleeve rolled up, a needle inserted into the vein at his elbow. The blood flowed through the tube in a steady crimson stream, carrying life from his body to the collection bag. Lily sat in a chair by the window, her stuffed elephant clutched to her chest, her eyes never leaving her father's face. She had not cried, had not complained, had not asked to leave. She simply watched, with the quiet understanding of a child who had already learned that sometimes love required sacrifice. Dr. Chen had explained the procedure carefully. The Ashford girl needed more blood than a standard donation provided. Marcus had agreed to give 2 units, nearly a pint of blood, pushing the limits of what was safe for a single donation. There would be side effects, weakness, dizziness, possibly nausea. He would need to rest for several days, to eat iron-rich foods, to monitor himself for complications. Marcus had agreed to all of it without hesitation. "You're doing great," the phlebotomist said, checking the collection bag. "About halfway there." Marcus nodded, fighting the lightheadedness that was beginning to creep in. He focused on Lily's face, on her small form silhouetted against the window, on the fierce love that had carried him through every impossible moment of the past 3 years. "Daddy?" Lily's voice was soft. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little tired." "That little girl. She's going to be okay now?" "Yes, baby. She's going to be okay." Outside the donation room, Victoria Ashford stood frozen in the corridor. Through the window, she could see the man she had humiliated lying on a hospital bed, giving his blood to save her daughter's life. His own daughter sat beside him, small and patient and brave, watching her father with eyes full of love and worry. Victoria had built her career on reading people, on understanding motivations, predicting reactions, identifying weaknesses to exploit. She had climbed to the top of Ashford Industries by being smarter and harder and more ruthless than anyone else in the room. But, looking through that window, she realized she had never understood anything at all. The janitor was not just a janitor. He was a father, like she was a mother. He had a child who needed him, like her child needed her. He had a life beyond the lobby he cleaned, dreams and fears and loves that she had never bothered to imagine. And when given the chance, he had chosen to save her daughter without hesitation, without conditions, without any of the strategic calculations that governed her own life. The phlebotomist emerged from the room, carrying the collection bags. "We've got what we need. Dr. Chen is prepping for transfusion now. Your daughter should stabilize within the hour." Victoria nodded, unable to speak. She watched through the window as Marcus Webb slowly sat up, swaying slightly, accepting a cup of juice from the nurse with a tired smile. She watched his daughter run to him, wrapping her small arms around his neck, pressing her face against his shoulder. And Victoria Ashford, CEO of a billion-dollar company, woman of power and influence and control, felt something she had not felt in years. Shame. Deep, burning, inescapable shame. The transfusion took 45 minutes. Victoria spent every second of it in the hallway outside her daughter's room, watching through the window as the blood Marcus Webb had given flowed into Emma's small body. The monitors showed her vital signs stabilizing, her blood pressure rising, her oxygen levels returning to normal. The gray pallor faded from her cheeks, replaced by the faint pink of returning life. Dr. Chen emerged at 7:15. His face finally showing the relief that Victoria had been too afraid to feel. "She's stable. The transfusion was successful. She's going to need surgery tomorrow to repair the damage from the hemorrhage, but her prognosis is excellent." Victoria sagged against the wall, tears streaming down her face. "Can I see her? She's sleeping now. But yes, you can sit with her." Victoria entered the room slowly, as if approaching something sacred. Emma lay in the hospital bed, looking impossibly small against the white sheets. But her breathing was steady, and her face was peaceful. Victoria took her daughter's hand and held it, feeling the warmth of her skin, the pulse beating steadily at her wrist. "I almost lost you," she whispered. "I almost lost everything." She sat there for nearly an hour, watching Emma sleep, processing the events of the day. At 8 o'clock, a soft knock interrupted her vigil. She looked up to find a nurse standing in the doorway. "Mrs. Ashford? I thought you might want to know the man who donated blood for your daughter. He's being discharged now." He's in the lobby, waiting for a taxi with his daughter. Victoria stood immediately. I need to speak to him. I should tell you something first. The nurse hesitated, choosing her words carefully. I recognized Mr. Webb when he came in. He works at Ashford Industries. He's on the cleaning staff. But before that, well, one of the other nurses knew him from before. He used to be an engineer. A good one, apparently. He gave it all up when his wife got sick, spent everything he had trying to save her, then took whatever job he could find to support his daughter after she passed. Victoria felt the words like physical blows. An engineer, a widower, a man who had sacrificed everything for love, and she had treated him like he was nothing. His daughter? The nurse continued. The little girl with him? She has a heart condition. Nothing serious right now, but she needs regular monitoring. He works 2 jobs to keep up with the medical bills. No insurance, but he never misses an appointment. Victoria thought of the way she had spoken to him in the lobby, the contempt in her voice, the dismissal in her eyes. She had looked at a hero and seen only a janitor. She had looked at a grieving father and seen only an obstacle. "Thank you," she managed. "For telling me." She walked out of Emma's room on unsteady legs, heading for the lobby. She did not know what she would say. She did not know if any words could undo what she had done, but she knew she had to try. The hospital lobby was nearly empty at 8:30 on a Thursday evening. Marcus sat on a bench near the exit, Lily asleep in his lap, waiting for the taxi he had called. The donation had taken more out of him than he had expected. His head ached, his limbs felt heavy, and a persistent dizziness made standing difficult. But Lily was warm against his chest, and Emma Ashford was alive, and that was enough. He heard the footsteps before he saw her, the click of heels on linoleum, hesitant now instead of commanding. He looked up to find Victoria Ashford standing 10 feet away, her face a mask of uncertainty he had never seen before. "Mr. Webb," she stopped, seeming to struggle with what came next. "Please. May I apologize?" Marcus looked at her for a long moment. He thought of the morning, of the lobby, of the words that had cut deeper than she would ever know. He thought of Sarah, who had taught him that kindness was not weakness, that forgiveness was not surrender. "You don't need to apologize," he said quietly. "I did what anyone would do." "No." Victoria took a step closer, her voice cracking. "Not anyone. I wouldn't have. If our positions were reversed, if you had humiliated me the way I humiliated you, I don't know if I would have helped." She paused, swallowing hard. "You saved my daughter's life. After everything I said to you, after the way I treated you, you saved her life without hesitation." "Why?" Marcus considered the question. Why had he done it? Because Emma had gripped his wrist and begged him not to let her die. Because Lily had asked if they could help. Because Sarah had always believed that the measure of a person was not how they treated those above them, but how they treated those below. Because she's a child, he said simply. Because she was scared and her mother wasn't there. Because I could help. He shifted Lily in his arms, preparing to stand. "My daughter's tired. I need to get her home." "Please." Victoria stepped forward again, her hand reaching out. "Let me at least arrange a car for you. A proper car, with a car seat for your daughter. Let me do something." Marcus looked at her outstretched hand, at the desperation in her eyes. He thought of all the times he had been dismissed, overlooked, treated as less than. He thought of how easy it would be to walk away, to let her sit with her guilt, to take some small satisfaction in her suffering. But that was not who he was. That was not who Sarah had loved. "A car would be appreciated," he said finally. "Thank you." Victoria's relief was visible. She pulled out her phone, made a quick call, arranged for a company car to take them home. When it arrived 15 minutes later, she walked them out herself, watching as Marcus settled Lily into the car seat as he buckled himself in beside her. "Mr. Webb," she said as he reached for the door, "I hurt you today. I judged you without knowing anything about you. I'm sorry. Truly sorry." Marcus met her eyes. He saw shame there, and regret, and something that might have been the beginning of change. He did not offer forgiveness that was not his to give, not yet, not while the wound was still fresh. But he offered something else. "Thank you for the car," he said. "I hope your daughter recovers well." He closed the door, and the car pulled away into the night, leaving Victoria Ashford standing alone on the hospital steps, staring after him. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 o'clock Friday morning. Victoria had been dreading it since she received the emergency summons late Thursday night. She knew what they would say. She had abandoned a critical investor presentation to rush to the hospital. She had left Robert Chen, the CFO, to handle questions he was not prepared to answer. She had put her personal life ahead of company interests, and in the world of corporate leadership, that was an unforgivable sin. The boardroom was full when she arrived, 8 faces arranged around the mahogany table, none of them friendly. Harold Weston, the chairman, sat at the head, his expression carved from stone. "Victoria, please, sit down." She sat, her spine straight, her face composed. She had learned long ago to hide weakness in this room. "I assume you know why we've called this meeting," Harold continued. "Your departure yesterday caused significant concern among our institutional investors." Robert did his best to reassure them, but questions were raised about your commitment to the company, your judgment, your priorities. Victoria listened without interrupting. She had prepared for this, had rehearsed her explanation, had marshaled her arguments. But sitting here now, looking at the faces of people who saw her only as a function of quarterly earnings, she felt something shift inside her. "My daughter almost died yesterday," she said quietly. "She had an internal hemorrhage. She needed emergency surgery and a blood transfusion from a rare donor. I left the meeting because I was told she might not survive the night." The room fell silent. Harold cleared his throat. "We understand that, Victoria, and we're glad she's recovering. But this company employs over 4,000 people. Their livelihoods depend on stable leadership, on investors who trust us to put the business first." "I know." Victoria looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. "And I've spent 15 years proving that I can do that. I've sacrificed birthdays and recitals and school plays. I've missed first steps and first words and first days of school. I've given this company everything, and I told myself it was worth it because I was building something important." She paused, feeling the words take shape, feeling the truth of them in her bones. "Yesterday, a janitor saved my daughter's life. A man I had humiliated that very morning. A man I had dismissed as beneath my notice. He gave his blood, gave it willingly and without hesitation, because my daughter was a child in danger and he could help." She thought of Marcus Webb, sitting in the hospital lobby with Lily sleeping in his lap, exhausted and dizzy but refusing to leave until he knew Emma was stable. That man has nothing. No insurance, no savings, no safety net. But he has something I lost a long time ago. He has his priorities straight. He knows what matters. Harold frowned. "Victoria, this is all very touching, but I'm not resigning," Victoria interrupted. "And I'm not apologizing for leaving that meeting. What I am doing is changing. This company is going to become the kind of place where a single father working 2 jobs can get health insurance for his daughter, where people are treated with dignity, regardless of their position, where profit is not the only measure of success." She stood, gathering her papers. "You can support me in this, or you can replace me. But I'm done pretending that being powerful means being cruel." She walked out of the boardroom, leaving 8 stunned faces behind her. That afternoon, Victoria went back to the hospital. Emma was awake now, sitting up in bed and watching cartoons, looking miraculously healthy for a child who had nearly died 24 hours earlier. "Mommy!" Emma's face lit up when Victoria entered. "The doctor said, I'm doing really good. They said the blood from the nice man saved me." Victoria sat on the edge of the bed, smoothing her daughter's hair. "Yes, sweetheart. He did save you. Can I meet him? I want to say thank you." Victoria thought of Marcus Webb, of his quiet dignity, of his gentle refusal to accept her apology. "Maybe someday, baby, if he wants to meet you." A soft knock interrupted them. Victoria turned to find Marcus standing in the doorway, Lily peeking out from behind his legs. "I'm sorry to intrude," he said. "The nurse said Emma was doing well. Lily wanted to make her a card. He held up a piece of construction paper covered in crayon drawings, flowers and hearts, and 2 stick figures holding hands. Victoria felt tears spring to her eyes. "Please, come in." Marcus entered slowly, his movements still showing the effects of yesterday's donation. Lily hung back, suddenly shy, clutching the card to her chest. Emma leaned forward, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Are you the man who saved me?" Marcus knelt beside the bed, bringing himself to Emma's eye level. "I just helped a little. The doctors did most of the work." "Daddy gave his blood," Lily announced, finding her courage. "Because you needed it, and he had the right kind. He was really brave." Emma looked at the small girl with wonder. "Is he your daddy? The best daddy in the whole world?" Marcus smiled, the first real smile Victoria had seen from him. "Girls, why don't you show each other the card? I think Emma might like the flowers." As the 2 children bent over Lily's artwork, chattering already like old friends, Victoria stepped closer to Marcus. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. Lily insisted. "She's been asking about Emma all day. She's a wonderful child. You've raised her well." Marcus looked at his daughter, his eyes soft with love. "She's raised me, I think. After her mother died, she was the only thing that kept me going." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the 2 girls. Emma was showing Lily the buttons on her hospital bed, making it rise and fall, while Lily giggled. "I meant what I said yesterday," Victoria finally spoke. "About being sorry. About judging you. I've spent my whole life measuring people by their positions, their power, their usefulness to me. I never stopped to see them as human beings." Marcus turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to do better. Because I want to be the kind of person my daughter can be proud of." She paused, gathering courage. "And because I want to ask you something. Not as an apology. As an opportunity." Marcus was silent for a long moment. "What kind of opportunity?" "Ashford Industries needs to change. We need to treat our employees, all of them, with more respect, more dignity. We need policies that support working parents, that recognize the sacrifices people make, that value human beings over productivity metrics." She took a breath. "I want to start a program for single parents in our company. Health insurance, flexible hours, emergency childcare. And I want you to help me design it." Marcus stared at her. "You want me to?" "What?" "You know what these families need. You've lived it. I can throw money at programs all day, but without someone who understands the reality, it'll be nothing but corporate PR." She met his eyes, hoping he could see her sincerity. "I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a consulting position. Part-time, paid, with full benefits for you and Lily. You can keep your other job if you want, or you can come work for me in a role that uses your engineering background. Whatever you choose, I want your voice in the room." Marcus looked at Lily, who was now braiding Emma's hair with the solemnity of a surgeon. He thought of Sarah, of the dreams they had shared, of the life they had planned before illness and debt had torn it all away. "I've been judged my whole life," he said slowly, "for being poor, for taking jobs that people think are beneath me, for not being able to give my daughter everything she deserves." He turned back to Victoria. "I stopped caring what people thought a long time ago, but this could change something. Not for me, for people like me." He extended his hand. "I'll do it, but I have conditions. The program has to be real, not just a PR stunt. And you have to listen when I tell you things you don't want to hear." Victoria took his hand, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. "Agreed." From the hospital bed, Emma called out, "Mommy, Lily says she wants to be my friend. Can she come to my birthday party?" Victoria looked at Marcus. He looked back at her, and for the first time, something like warmth passed between them. "I think that can be arranged," Victoria said. The Single Parent Support Program launched 6 weeks later, on a bright Monday morning in October. The ceremony was held in the main lobby of Ashford Industries, the same lobby where Marcus had once been humiliated, where Victoria had looked at him and seen nothing worth knowing. Today, a small stage had been erected near the elevators, draped with banners announcing the Victoria Webb Single Parent Initiative. Marcus had insisted on the name over Victoria's objections. "It's not about me," she had argued. "It's about the employees, the families. It's about accountability." Marcus had replied, "When your name is on something, you can't walk away from it." The lobby was packed with employees, executives and janitors, engineers and receptionists, all gathered together for the first time anyone could remember. Victoria stood at the podium, Marcus beside her, as she explained the program's benefits. Subsidized health insurance, emergency child care funds, flexible scheduling, paid family leave. "This program exists because one man taught me something I should have learned a long time ago," Victoria said, her voice steady despite the emotion beneath. "He taught me that dignity is not earned. It is inherent. Every person who walks through these doors deserves to be seen, to be valued, to be treated with respect." She turned to Marcus, who shifted uncomfortably under the attention. "Marcus Webb gave his blood to save my daughter's life, knowing I had treated him with contempt. He showed me grace when I deserved none, and he helped me build a program that I hope will change lives." She stepped back from the podium, gesturing for Marcus to speak. He approached the microphone reluctantly, Lily watching from the front row with Emma beside her. "I'm not good at speeches," he began, drawing a ripple of laughter. "I'm better at fixing things, machines, systems, problems with clear solutions." He paused, looking out at the crowd. "But some problems don't have clear solutions. Being a single parent is one of them. Every day is a calculation. How much sleep can I sacrifice? How many hours can I work? How do I make sure my daughter knows she's loved even when I'm exhausted and scared and barely holding on?" His voice softened. "This program won't solve everything, but it might make the calculation a little easier. It might mean one less parent has to choose between a doctor's appointment and a paycheck. It might mean one more child gets to grow up knowing they matter." He looked at Lily, who smiled back at him with Sarah's eyes. "That's worth something. That's worth everything." 3 months later, on a crisp January afternoon, Victoria and Emma sat in the waiting room of the pediatric cardiology clinic at St. Vincent's Hospital. Emma was there for her final follow-up, the last checkpoint before the doctors declared her fully recovered. Across the room, Marcus and Lily waited for their own appointment. Lily's regular monitoring, the routine they had followed for years. "Miss Ashford?" The nurse called Emma's name, and Victoria stood to follow, but she paused at the doorway, turning back to look at Marcus. "Would you like to get coffee after? All 4 of us? There's a cafe downstairs that makes excellent hot chocolate." Marcus looked at Lily, who nodded eagerly. "We'd like that." The appointments took an hour. Emma's results were perfect, full recovery. No lasting damage from her ordeal. Lily's checkup was equally encouraging. Her heart murmur remained stable, showing no signs of progression. When they met in the cafe afterward, the 2 girls immediately claimed a table by the window. Heads bent together over the coloring pages the nurse had given them. Marcus and Victoria sat nearby, watching their daughters with identical expressions of quiet wonder. "She talks about Lily constantly," Victoria said. "Lily this, Lily that. I think she's found her best friend. The feeling is mutual. Lily asked me last week if Emma could be her sister." Marcus shook his head, smiling. "I explained, that's not quite how it works." Victoria laughed, a sound that had become more common in recent months. "They're good for each other. Emma's never had a friend who didn't treat her differently because of who I am. Lily's never had a friend who didn't treat her differently because of who I'm not." They sat in comfortable silence, sipping their coffee, watching snow begin to fall outside the window. "Marcus," Victoria said finally, "I've been thinking about the program, about everything that's happened." She turned to face him. "I know I can never undo what I said to you in that lobby. I know, sorry, doesn't erase the hurt. But I want you to know that meeting you changed me, made me see things I'd been blind to my whole life." Marcus considered her words. He thought of Sarah, of how she had always believed in second chances, in the possibility of change, in the stubborn goodness hidden in every heart. My wife used to say that people are like machines, he replied. Sometimes they break. Sometimes they just need recalibration. He smiled slightly. I think you've recalibrated pretty well. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. Don't let it go to your head. But he was smiling, too. From the window table, Emma called out, Can we go play in it? Please, Daddy, Lily added, her eyes bright with hope. Marcus and Victoria looked at each other. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of wounds healing, of walls coming down, of possibilities opening where none had existed before. What do you think? Victoria asked. Should we let them drag us out into the cold? Marcus looked at his daughter, at her joy and innocence, at the friend she had found against all odds. He thought of Sarah, and how she would have loved this moment, this proof that kindness could transform strangers into family. Maybe that's exactly what we all need, he said. They gathered their coats and headed for the door, two families becoming one, stepping together into the falling snow, ready to begin again. Daniel Carter walked into the wrong restaurant on a Tuesday evening in Manhattan. He had been looking for a modest Italian place where a colleague had promised to introduce him to a potential handyman client, but the address on his phone led him instead to a dining room draped in silk and candlelight where a single table sat empty near the window. The hostess gestured toward it before he could explain his confusion, and somehow he found himself sitting down. His phone buzzed with a video call from his daughter Lily, her small face filling the screen just as a woman in a black dress approached the table and stood there, watching him with eyes that revealed nothing at all. Evelyn Moore had arrived expecting a blind date arranged by her father's associates, another suitable candidate from a carefully curated list of men deemed appropriate for marriage into the Moore family. She recognized immediately that the man seated at her reserved table was not the investment banker whose photograph she had reviewed that morning. His clothes were clean but worn at the edges. His hands showed the calluses of physical labor. He was saying goodnight to a child on his phone, his voice soft and unhurried in a way that seemed almost foreign in this room full of whispered negotiations and calculated silences. She should have corrected the mistake. She should have summoned the hostess and demanded an explanation. Instead, Evelyn found herself curious about what would happen if she simply sat down across from this stranger and let the evening unfold. She signaled discreetly to the waiter, a gesture that meant everything should proceed as planned, and then she lowered herself into the chair opposite Daniel Carter and studied him the way she might study an unexpected variable in a quarterly report. Daniel ended the call with Lily and looked up to find a woman watching him with an intensity that made him briefly forget where he was. She introduced herself only as Evelyn, no last name offered, and when he apologized for what he assumed was some kind of seating error, she simply said that errors were often more interesting than plans. He did not know what to make of that statement, so he said nothing and waited for her to explain. The conversation that followed moved in directions neither of them anticipated. Evelyn asked questions designed to categorize him quickly, to determine his profession and his connections and his usefulness. Daniel answered slowly, without the polish of someone accustomed to these environments, and his honesty caught her off guard more than once. When she asked what he did for a living, he told her he was a handyman who took whatever work he could find, that he had once been a construction foreman before his wife died and everything fell apart. When she asked why he was dining alone in a restaurant that charged more for a single appetizer than most people earned in a day, he admitted he had walked through the wrong door and was too embarrassed to leave. Evelyn had spent her entire adult life surrounded by men who lied effortlessly about small things and large things alike. Daniel's candor unsettled her in ways she could not immediately name. She found herself leaning forward slightly, asking follow-up questions she had not planned to ask, genuinely wanting to know how a widowed father of a young daughter had ended up sitting across from her on this particular night. He mentioned Lily again without meaning to, describing how she had reminded him that morning to wear his good shirt because she wanted him to make a nice impression on his new client. The good shirt, Evelyn noticed, had a small tear near the collar that had been mended with careful stitches. Something about that detail stayed with her longer than it should have. She had intended to dismiss him politely after the first course, to send him away with a gracious excuse and wait for the correct date to arrive. But the correct date never came, and Evelyn found herself ordering a second bottle of wine and asking Daniel Carter questions about his daughter's school and his late wife's favorite memories, and the apartment where he lived that was too small but close to the park where Lily liked to feed the pigeons. By the time the main course arrived, Evelyn had made a decision that would have seemed insane to anyone who knew her. She had been searching for months for a solution to a problem that had no good answers. And this stranger, with his honest eyes and his mended shirt, had suddenly presented a possibility she had never considered. She set down her fork and looked at him directly, the way she looked at board members when she was about to propose something that would change everything. Daniel had been enjoying the meal more than he expected, despite the strangeness of the situation. The food was better than anything he had eaten in years, and the woman across from him, though intimidating, seemed genuinely interested in his answers rather than simply waiting for her turn to speak. He had almost forgotten that he did not belong here, that this evening was built on a mistake he should have corrected hours ago. Then Evelyn Moore told him who she was. She explained that her family owned one of the largest private investment firms on the East Coast, that she had been running the company as CEO for the past 5 years, and that her position was now threatened by forces both inside and outside her organization. Her father, Richard Moore, had recently joined an alliance with board members who believed the company needed a different kind of leadership. They wanted Evelyn married to someone from an approved list of candidates, someone whose family connections and public image would strengthen the Moore brand. If she did not comply within the next 30 days, they would initiate a vote of no confidence that would almost certainly succeed. Daniel listened to all of this with growing confusion. He could not understand why she was telling him these things, why she was sharing the intimate details of her corporate battles with a man she had met by accident less than 2 hours ago. Then she told him the rest. She was offering him $50 million to marry her. The marriage would be contractual, bound by specific terms and a predetermined timeline. He would play the role of her devoted husband in public while maintaining whatever private life he wished. After 2 years, they would divorce amicably, he would keep the money, and they would never speak again. Daniel stared at her for a long moment, certain that she was joking. But Evelyn Moore did not joke. Her expression remained perfectly composed as she explained that she had considered every option available to her and concluded that a strategic marriage to an unknown outsider was preferable to surrendering her company to people who would destroy everything she had built. Before Daniel could respond, a woman in a gray suit appeared beside the table. She introduced herself as Margaret Lewis, legal counsel to the Moore family, and placed a leather folder on the white tablecloth between them. Inside was a contract that ran to nearly 40 pages, every clause precise and binding. Margaret explained the terms in a voice that suggested she had done this many times before. The marriage would take place within 2 weeks. Daniel would receive an initial payment of $10 million upon signing, with the remaining $40 million distributed over the duration of the contract. He would be required to attend certain public events, to maintain a credible appearance of marital happiness, and to refrain from any behavior that might embarrass the Moore family. In exchange, Evelyn would ensure that his daughter Lily received the best education money could buy, and that Daniel himself would never need to work again unless he chose to. Daniel looked at the contract without touching it. He looked at Margaret Lewis with her impassive face and her expensive briefcase. He looked at Evelyn Moore, who sat perfectly still across the table, waiting for his answer as though she were waiting for a quarterly earnings report. He thought about Lily sleeping in their small apartment, about the bills he could not pay and the opportunities he could not provide. He thought about his wife Sarah and the promises he had made to her before she died. Promises about raising their daughter with integrity and love and the kind of values that could not be purchased. $50 million sat on the table between them, and Daniel Carter did not know what to do. Evelyn watched him carefully, reading his hesitation the way she read reluctant investors during difficult negotiations. She had expected him to accept immediately. Men in his position always accepted. They calculated the numbers, recognized the opportunity, and signed their names without looking back. But Daniel was not calculating. He was thinking about something else entirely, something she could not see in his expression. She decided to accelerate the timeline. "The offer expires tonight," she told him. "If you walk away from this table without signing, you will never hear from me again. The choice is simple: marry me or leave now." Daniel felt the weight of her words settle over him like a physical pressure. He had never been good at making decisions under stress. Sarah used to tease him about it, about the way he would spend 20 minutes choosing between two nearly identical items at the grocery store. But this was not a grocery store. And the choice before him was not between two brands of cereal. He pulled out his phone and looked at the photograph on his home screen. Lily smiled back at him, gap-toothed and radiant, wearing the paper crown she had made during art class. He had taken that picture 3 days ago, on a morning when everything had felt almost manageable, when the weight of his struggles had briefly lifted, and he had allowed himself to believe that things might eventually get better. $50 million would change everything. Lily could go to any school she wanted. They could move out of their cramped apartment into a real home with a yard and a room of her own. He could stop worrying about next month's rent, stop taking jobs that left him exhausted and broken, stop lying awake at night wondering how he would keep his daughter fed and clothed and safe. But he would also be lying to her. He would be building their new life on a foundation of deception, teaching her through his actions that money was more important than truth. Evelyn's patience began to thin. She was not accustomed to waiting for answers. In her world, hesitation was weakness, and weakness was exploited without mercy. She had made Daniel Carter an offer that most people would consider a miracle, and he was sitting there staring at a photograph of his daughter as though the decision required actual thought. She signaled to Margaret, who began gathering the documents as though preparing to leave. Daniel looked up and met Evelyn's eyes. He did not look away. He told her he would not sign anything tonight. He told her that a decision this significant deserved more than a few hours of consideration. That he had a daughter whose life would be affected by whatever choice he made, and that he refused to treat her future as a business transaction conducted over expensive wine. Evelyn's expression flickered with something he could not identify. Surprise, perhaps, or irritation, or something else entirely. She told him he was making a mistake. She told him that opportunities like this did not come twice, that men in his position could not afford to be selective. She told him that his pride was a luxury he had not earned. Daniel stood up from the table. He thanked her for the meal, apologized again for the confusion that had brought him here, and told her that if she wanted to continue this conversation, she would need to give him time to think. Then he walked out of the restaurant and into the cold Manhattan night, leaving $50 million and a woman who had never been refused, sitting alone at a table set for two. He did not expect to hear from her again. 3 days later, Evelyn Moore appeared at the construction site where Daniel was working a temporary job. She stood among the sawdust and the noise in her designer coat and her impractical heels, looking as out of place as he had felt in her restaurant. She did not explain how she had found him. She simply said that she was willing to negotiate. Daniel set down his tools and led her to a quiet corner away from the other workers. He asked her why she had come, why she had not simply moved on to another candidate from her approved list. Evelyn admitted that she did not know. She said that something about his refusal had stayed with her, that she had spent 3 days trying to understand why a man who clearly needed money had walked away from more than he could ever earn. She said that his answer mattered to her in ways she could not explain, and that she wanted to hear his conditions before she made any final decisions. Daniel studied her face and saw something he had not noticed before. Beneath the polished exterior and the careful control, Evelyn Moore was afraid. She was fighting a battle she was not sure she could win, and she had come to him not because he was her best option, but because he was the only person who had treated her like something other than a transaction. He told her his conditions. His daughter Lily would never be used as a prop or a publicity tool. She would not be photographed, interviewed, or displayed at any public event without his explicit consent. Her education and her welfare would be guaranteed, regardless of what happened between him and Evelyn. She would be protected from the politics of the Moore family and the pressures of their world. Evelyn listened without interrupting. When he finished, she asked if that was everything. Daniel said it was not. He told her that if they were going to do this, he needed to understand why. Not the corporate reasons, not the board votes and the family pressures. He needed to understand why Evelyn Moore, a woman who could have anything she wanted, was willing to marry a stranger she had met by accident in a restaurant. For a long moment, Evelyn said nothing. The construction noise faded into background static, and Daniel watched as something shifted behind her eyes. She told him about her mother, who had died when Evelyn was 12 years old. She told him about her father, Richard Moore, who had responded to that loss by transforming his daughter into an extension of his ambitions. She had been raised to perform, to achieve, to represent the family brand in everything she did. Her marriages, her relationships, her friendships were all evaluated according to their strategic value. She had never been allowed to want anything that did not serve the larger purpose. The CEO position was supposed to be her escape. She had believed that if she could prove herself capable of running the company, her father would finally see her as something more than an asset to be deployed. Instead, her success had only made her more valuable, more controlled, more trapped. The marriage requirement was not new. Richard Moore had been arranging suitable matches for his daughter since she turned 25. She had refused them all, finding ways to delay and deflect without directly defying her father's wishes. But now the board was involved, and the timeline had become impossible to ignore. If she did not produce an acceptable husband within the month, she would lose everything she had worked for. Daniel listened to her story and recognized something familiar in it. He had spent years trying to build a life according to other people's expectations. His own father had wanted him to take over the family business, a small plumbing company that Daniel had never loved. He had gone along with it until his father died and the business failed, and then he had drifted into construction work because he did not know what else to do. Meeting Sarah had changed everything. She had seen something in him that he had not seen in himself, a capacity for tenderness and patience that had no value in the world his father had prepared him for. She had encouraged him to be a father when Lily came along, to put his daughter first in ways that his own father never had. When Sarah died, Daniel had promised himself that he would honor her memory by raising Lily with the same love and acceptance she had given him. He would not repeat his father's mistakes. He would not turn his daughter into a tool for his own unfulfilled ambitions. He told Evelyn some of this, not all of it, but enough for her to understand that he knew what it meant to be shaped by forces beyond his control. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition that neither of them had expected. They were not allies. They were not even friends. But they were two people who had been wounded by the same fundamental injury. Two people who understood what it meant to live according to someone else's script. Evelyn asked him again if he would consider her offer. Daniel said he needed more time. She gave him her personal number, not the one routed through her assistant, and told him he had 1 week to decide. The week passed slowly. Daniel worked his jobs and cared for his daughter and tried not to think about the impossible choice that awaited him. She asked him why he seemed sad, why he kept staring at his phone, why he had not been sleeping. He told her he was trying to make a difficult decision, one that would affect both of their lives. He told her he wanted to make the right choice, but was not sure what that meant anymore. Lily thought about this with the seriousness of a child who has already learned that life does not always make sense. She asked him if the decision was about money. Daniel admitted that it was, partly. She nodded slowly, processing this information. Then she told him something that stayed with him long after she had gone to bed. She said that money was nice because it bought ice cream and new shoes and trips to the museum. But money was not as nice as having him home at night to read her stories. Money was not as nice as knowing that he would always be there when she woke up from bad dreams. Money was not as nice as being loved. Daniel held his daughter and cried quietly into her hair, and in that moment he knew what his answer would be. But before he could call Evelyn, she came to him. It happened on a Saturday afternoon. Daniel was taking Lily to the park when a black car pulled up beside them, and Evelyn stepped out, looking uncomfortable in casual clothes that still managed to cost more than his monthly rent. She apologized for the intrusion and explained that something had happened, something that required an immediate conversation. Lily looked at the strange woman with open curiosity. She asked Daniel if this was a friend. Before he could answer, Evelyn crouched down to Lily's level and introduced herself. She said she was someone who needed to talk to Lily's father about important grown-up things, but that she did not want to interrupt their time together. Lily studied her with the same careful attention she gave to everything. Then she asked Evelyn a question that cut through all the pretense and strategy. She asked Evelyn if she wanted to marry her daddy. Evelyn froze. Daniel felt his face flush with embarrassment. He started to explain that Lily had overheard parts of his phone conversations, that children often misunderstood adult situations, that this was not what it seemed. But Lily was not finished. She told Evelyn that if she wanted to marry her daddy, she needed to know some important things. She needed to know that he snored sometimes and forgot to buy milk and got grumpy when he was tired. She needed to know that he made the best pancakes in the world and always checked for monsters under the bed and never broke his promises. She needed to know that he was the best daddy anyone could ever have, and that if Evelyn was mean to him, Lily would not forgive her. Evelyn listened to this speech without moving. When Lily finished, the CEO of one of the largest investment firms on the East Coast found herself completely without words. Daniel watched as something broke open behind Evelyn's carefully composed expression. She looked at Lily, then at Daniel, then back at Lily. And then, for the first time since he had met her, Evelyn Moore smiled a real smile. She told Lily that she did not want to be mean to anyone. She said that she was actually very lonely and very scared, and that she had been making some choices that were not very good. She said that meeting Lily's daddy had made her think about things differently, and that she was still trying to figure out what to do. Lily considered this answer with visible skepticism. She asked Evelyn why she was scared. Evelyn glanced at Daniel, who nodded slightly, giving her permission to continue. She told Lily that some people wanted to take away her job and that she had been trying to find ways to stop them. She said that sometimes grown-ups made complicated plans that did not work the way they expected, and that she was beginning to wonder if her plan was one of those. Lily nodded as though this explanation made perfect sense. Then she took Evelyn's hand and asked if she wanted to come feed the pigeons. Evelyn looked at Daniel, helpless and uncertain in a way he had never seen her. He told her that the pigeons were not very patient, and that she should probably come along if she wanted to see them. They walked to the park together, the three of them, and for an hour they did nothing but throw breadcrumbs and watch the birds gather. Lily chattered about her school and her friends and her favorite books, and Evelyn listened with an attention that seemed to surprise even herself. When it was time to leave, Lily hugged Evelyn around the waist and told her she should come back again sometime. Evelyn promised that she would try. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Evelyn called Daniel and told him she was canceling the contract. She explained that seeing him with his daughter had forced her to confront something she had been avoiding. The marriage plan had never been about finding a solution. It had been about maintaining control, about refusing to admit that she could not solve every problem through strategy and leverage. She had been willing to use another human being as a tool, just as her father had used her, and she was no longer willing to be that person. Daniel asked her what she would do instead. She said she did not know. She said she was probably going to lose her company and disappoint her father and face consequences she had spent her entire life trying to avoid. She said she was terrified, and that the terror felt strangely like freedom. He told her that sounded about right. The next 2 weeks were difficult for Evelyn in ways she had never experienced. Her father summoned her to a meeting where he made his expectations absolutely clear. The board scheduled a vote of no confidence. Former allies suddenly became unavailable, their support evaporating as soon as they sensed which way the wind was blowing. She could have stopped it. Even at the last moment, she could have produced a suitable husband and preserved her position. Margaret Lewis had a list of candidates who would sign the contract without asking questions. Men who understood the value of strategic alliance and did not care about emotional complications. But Evelyn kept thinking about Lily in the park, throwing breadcrumbs to the pigeons with complete concentration. She kept thinking about Daniel standing at the construction site in his worn work clothes, refusing $50 million because his daughter's integrity mattered more than his own survival. She kept thinking about what it might feel like to make a choice that was entirely her own. She went to the board meeting and told them she would not be presenting a husband. She told them she was prepared to accept whatever consequences followed. She told them that she had spent her entire life performing for other people's approval, and that she was finished. The vote went against her. Richard Moore sat stone-faced as his daughter was removed from the position she had held for 5 years. He did not speak to her afterward, and she did not expect him to. What she did not expect was what happened next. 3 days after losing her company, Evelyn found herself standing outside Daniel's apartment building in Brooklyn. She had not called ahead. She had not prepared a speech. She simply arrived, carrying nothing but her uncertainty and her exhaustion. Daniel opened the door and looked at her without surprise, as though he had been expecting this visit all along. She told him she had lost everything. He invited her inside and made her coffee in a chipped mug, and she sat in his small kitchen and looked at the crayon drawings taped to the refrigerator and the stack of unpaid bills on the counter and the evidence of a life lived without pretense or performance. She told him she did not know who she was anymore. She said that her entire identity had been built around achievement and control, and now that both were gone, she felt like a stranger in her own body. Daniel listened without offering advice or solutions. He simply listened. The way he listened to Lily when she needed to talk through a problem. When she finished, he told her that losing who you thought you were was sometimes the first step toward finding who you actually are. She asked him how he knew that. He told her about the months after Sarah died, when he had felt so lost that getting out of bed seemed impossible. He told her about the slow process of rebuilding himself around his love for his daughter, of learning that his identity did not depend on his success or his failures, but on the choices he made every single day. Evelyn stayed for dinner that night. Lily was delighted to see her again and insisted that she sit beside her and try the dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets that Daniel had made. They ate together at a table that wobbled slightly, in an apartment that was too small and too modest and somehow more welcoming than any space Evelyn had ever occupied. When it was time for Lily to go to bed, she asked Evelyn if she would come back tomorrow. Evelyn said she would try. Daniel walked her to the door, and they stood together in the hallway without speaking. Everything had changed between them, though neither could say exactly how or when. The contract was gone. The transaction was over. What remained was something fragile and undefined, something that had no guarantees and no predetermined timeline. Evelyn asked him if he thought she had made the right choice. Daniel told her he thought she had finally made a choice at all, and that was enough. She laughed quietly, a sound he had never heard from her before. Then she left, and he went back inside to read Lily her bedtime story. 1 month later, the three of them sat together in a small diner in Brooklyn, sharing a plate of pancakes that Daniel had not made himself. Lily was explaining in elaborate detail why the dinosaur exhibit at the Natural History Museum was far superior to the ocean exhibit, and Evelyn was listening with the same careful attention she had once reserved for quarterly reports. No promises had been made. No contracts had been signed. No one knew what the future held for any of them, but they were sitting at the right table now, in the right place, with the right people. And for the first time in longer than any of them could remember, that felt like enough. Outside the window, Manhattan continued its restless motion, indifferent to the small human dramas unfolding within its boundaries. Somewhere in a glass tower across the river, Richard Moore was probably planning his next move. Somewhere else, the board members who had voted against Evelyn were congratulating themselves on their strategic wisdom. None of that mattered here. In this booth, with its cracked vinyl seats and its laminated menus, Daniel watched his daughter teach Evelyn how to make a tower out of creamer cups, and he thought about all the wrong doors he had walked through to arrive at this moment. He thought about Sarah, who would have loved this strange turn of events, who would have seen in Evelyn the same wounded courage she had once seen in him. He thought about the $50 million he had refused, and he did not regret the choice for a single moment. Evelyn caught his eye across the table and smiled. That same real smile he had first seen in the park when Lily had asked her difficult questions. She was not the woman she had been a month ago. She was not yet the woman she would become. She was somewhere in between, learning to live without the armor she had worn for so long. So was he. So were they all. Lily finished her creamer tower and looked at both of them with the satisfied expression of an artist who has completed her masterpiece. She asked if they could come back to this diner again next Saturday. Evelyn said she would like that very much. Daniel agreed that it was a good plan, and somewhere in the ordinary miracle of that small agreement, a new kind of story began to take shape. Not a fairy tale, not a transaction, not a contract with predetermined terms, just three people choosing to show up for each other, one Saturday at a time, building something real in a world that too often settled for imitations. The diner hummed with its usual morning noise. The coffee grew cold in their cups. Lily asked for more pancakes, and life continued, imperfect and uncertain and exactly as it should be,